Now that we know how to connect alternate picking and sweeping, we have to figure out how to get from here to the full-blown high Gothic that is Frank's glorious Gambale Sweeping technique. What we've seen so far is that Frank's use of upward Pickslanting unlocks two superpowers: the upstroke sweep and the downstroke escape alternate picking motion. And this is why you'll see all kinds of Evel Knievel-like combinations of this motion and sweeping in many of Frank's signature phrases. As powerful as the upstroke sweep and the downstroke escape picking motion are, they actually only get us half the way there.
I always do it like that.
This is, of course, downward Pickslanting. When Frank is in downward Pickslanting mode, he's traveled through the wormhole to an alternate reality where his superpowers are reversed. In DWPS mode, Frank can sweep on downstrokes, because those are the ones with the reduced angle of attack for sliding. But his alternate picking motion has also changed. Check this out. It is now an upstroke escape picking motion. I think you can see here how the path of the picking motion has flipped. Instead of the downstrokes going up in the air, it's now the upstrokes that do that. They're moving along a path that takes them above the plane of the strings, so the upstroke is now the escape pick stroke, and the downstroke is now the trapped pick stroke. What this means is that with the USX motion, everything is the mirror image of our DSX motion. Instead of the downstroke, it's now the upstroke that has become our string switching pick stroke. This means that the upstroke always has to be the last note on the string. There's the last pick stroke, an upstroke, and here's our alternate picking string change. We still have to play an even number of notes on the string most of the time in order to switch strings with alternate picking. But the sequence of those pick strokes is now flipped. Instead of up-down on each string, this time we have to go down-up. Okay, that's really fast. Let's take a look at this a little more slowly. Still pretty fast. Did you catch the upstroke string change? Let's check it out step by step. Here's the 3-string downstroke sweep that sets up the sequence. And here's the escaped upstroke. That was 2 notes on the D string, the downstroke from the tail end of the sweep and the upstroke to escape. And now another alternate pick stroke, a downstroke, gets us back down again on the A string to complete the string change. This all happens so fast that you'd never know by listening that there are 2 motions being blended here, and that's why the blending has to be efficient. So just like with Frank's upward Pickslanting technique, his downward Pickslanting technique is really the union of 2 motions, the sweeping motion that moves horizontally, and the alternate picking escape motion that moves diagonally, just the opposite diagonal from Frank's DSX alternate picking motion. So what this gives us is nothing less than a blueprint for how Gambale Sweeping works at a mechanical level. It's divided into halves. Each half is represented by a Pickslant and contains an alternate picking motion and a sweeping motion. When Frank is in downward Pickslanting mode, he can sweep on downstrokes, and he can alternate pick in either direction, but only if the string change pick stroke is an upstroke. Upward Pickslanting mode is the reverse. Frank can sweep on upstrokes and alternate pick in either direction, but only if the string change pick stroke is a downstroke, because that's the escape pick stroke. And by flipping between these modes, he can play a wide range of phrases, because what he's really doing is flipping between different kinds of picking motions, each with different string switching capabilities. So if we're thinking in halves, then once we've chosen our Pickslanting mode, then the second thing we need to do is choose the 2 motions that match with it. And these really are different motions. For example, Frank's upstroke sweeping motion uses an upward Pickslant, but it moves parallel to the strings, horizontally across the screen. Frank's DSX alternate picking motion also uses an upward Pickslant, but it moves diagonal to the strings along the DSX pathway. The same distinction is true for Frank's downward Pickslanting mode. The downstroke sweep moves parallel through the strings, while the matching USX alternate picking motion moves diagonally. This is also a great example of how versatile the wrist is as a source of picking motion. If you watch Frank's hand and not the pick, you can see that it's moving horizontally during the sweep and diagonally during the upstroke. Frank is actually using two different directions of the same joint to create these pick strokes. Slanting the pick doesn't do any of that automatically. Frank still has to trigger all these motions independently. He still has to do the motions at some level. So if you think about it, the complete universe of Gambale sweeping physical motion possibilities boils down to 4 motions. The upstroke sweep, the DSX alternate picking motion, the downstroke sweep, and the USX alternate picking motion. In each of these halves, the sweeping motion and the alternate picking motion work together like a team. The difference in Pickslant makes these two teams easy to visualize, because the pick points in opposite directions. So you might think, okay, I got it. The reason we need 2 halves is because each half moves in a different direction. But it's actually a little more complicated than that. When Frank is in upward pickslanting mode, he doesn't only play descending lines. Sure, sweeps are upstrokes, which are descending. But Frank can and does alternate pick in either direction with a catch. The last note on the string needs to be a downstroke. This is true for ascending alternate picking and for descending alternate picking. Now, if we want to do downstroke sweeping, we can change the pick slant for that. And that drops us into Frank's downward pickslanting mode. And in this mode, it's true that sweeps being downstrokes are only ascending. But this isn't the whole story, because Frank can still alternate pick in both directions, again with a requirement. The last note on each string has to be an upstroke. This is true for ascending lines, which go up down to a higher string, and it's also true for descending alternate picking, up down to a lower string. In each of these cases, Frank is using alternate picking to move to a higher string and to a lower string inside of a high-speed line that also contains sweeping. He blends these motions so efficiently that it's too fast to see at normal speed. But slowed down, this is for sure what's happening. And it gives Frank tremendous flexibility in crafting lines that move in both directions, even when the sweeping portion of the line only moves in one direction. So in each of these halves, the sweeping is one directional, and the alternate picking is two directional, just pick stroke specific. So that's a lot of possibilities. And here's the tricky part, not every playing style even uses all of them. Django's influence in the Gypsy community was so significant that it spawned an entire playing style based around his technique. And through the lens of modern Gypsy masters like Yoshio Stefan, we can see how it works. The most important component is the downward pick slant, which you'll recognize right away. This is what makes possible our two core motions, the slanted USX alternate picking motion, where upstrokes do the escaping, which is really easy to see in Yoshio's technique, and the downstroke sweep, which is very common in Gypsy guitar. In the most traditional approach to Gypsy guitar, you'll only see the downward pick slant, which they lock into and maintain the whole time. This is why you only see one direction of sweeping and one kind of alternate picking motion, which again is the USX or upstroke escape. In this respect, the mighty George Benson is a cousin of the Gypsies. George also relies primarily on the downward pick slant. And like the Gypsies, his main alternate picking motion is USX or upstroke escape. Remember our rule of evens. This is why most of George's alternate picking lines are arranged in groups of 2s and 4s, where the final note on every string is an upstroke. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, downstroke accents, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, downstroke accents, and upstroke accent. And because of the downward pick slant, this is also why George relies primarily on downstroke sweeping.
Now coming out of that, you can play.
There's a 2-string downstroke sweep, another 2-string, another 2-string, and another 2-string. Again, all downstroke sweeps, not upstroke. So the Gypsy style, George's style, and the styles of many other great downward pickslanting players throughout history are all essentially one-way economy styles because they're based on one pickslant, which enables one direction of sweeping and one kind of alternate picking motion. That's half the economy world, an elegant and effective solution for the lines these players play. By comparison, Frank's Gambale Sweeping style uses both pickslants, downward and upward. This makes Gambale Sweeping a true two-way economy approach. And that means you'll also see two directions of sweeping and both varieties of alternate picking motions. So all 4 core economy motions are represented. Both pickslanting halves and all 4 core motions of Gambale Sweeping have been baked into Frank's teaching since the earliest days. In downward pickslanting mode, sweeps are downstrokes, and alternate string changes happen after upstrokes. And in upward pickslanting mode, sweeps are upstrokes, and alternate string changes happen after downstrokes. In example after example, Frank laid out these fundamental systems. And the sheer variety of cool combinations he came up with is enough to power a career's worth of creativity. And if we're willing to step outside the world of Gambale Sweeping for just a moment, there's actually a 5th, even less discussed picking motion in Frank's dazzling mechanics arsenal, and it's this one. This is also an escape stroke, but it's escaped at both ends, on the upstroke and on the downstroke. So it's actually a curved picking motion. Shallow and efficient, but curved nevertheless. This is the double escape pick stroke. And it's the same pick stroke used by master bluegrass pickers like David Greer and Molly Tuttle to power high-speed roll patterns. It's also the pick stroke behind Albert Lee's iconic country leads, and Steve Morse's trademark arpeggios. And even though Frank isn't really known for this kind of playing, he's quite good at it, and you will see it all over the place. Tucked inside lines based on one of Frank's 2 sweeping modes. So Frank is no doubt a master of harmonic modes, but we're learning that he's also a master of mechanical modes. In Frank's downward pickslanting mode, we use, of course, a downward pick slant and the equally slanted USX alternate picking motion. Sweeps are always downstrokes, and thanks to our USX motion, alternate string changes happen after upstrokes. In upward pickslanting mode, we use an upward pick slant paired with a slanted DSX alternate picking motion. Sweeps are upstrokes, and alternate picking string changes happen after downstrokes. And finally, the double escape mode, with its characteristically curved picking motion that doesn't use a pick slant, doesn't use sweeping, and where string changes can happen after any pick stroke. Consider for a moment the level of intuitive ability it required on Frank's part to figure out these angled and curved picking motions and the ingenious ways they interlock with his sweeping motion at a time in history when there was simply no mainstream awareness of these concepts. The way Frank fluidly connects all these motions together while improvising freely is really pretty amazing. Now that you know what to look for, you can probably spot the two-way pick slanting. And you can probably also spot the amazing facility with alternate string changes and string skipping. Watching Frank work his magic up close like this, it's almost like seeing the Matrix. It's one thing to solve a problem most people weren't even thinking about, and it's another to have the pro athlete's degree of fine motor skill needed to actually perform the solution at an elite level. And it's still another to be complete enough as a musician that even people who don't care about picking mechanics are still entranced by what you have to play. It's an honor and a privilege to place a camera 3 inches away from the hands of the best players in the world, and we at Cracking the Code will probably never get tired of it. We can only be grateful that pioneers like Frank are actually willing to sit down for this kind of crazy investigation, because they're the lights that show us the way, and we'd be lost without them.